"She's just a security guard," my father said, pleasant as china, while presenting me to a silver-haired couple at the rehearsal dinner. The words landed with a neat little smile, the kind he reserved for waiters and parking valets. Eleanor linked his arm and beamed at the room like it already belonged to her. I kept my seat, knuckles under the linen, breathing through the old urge to vanish. "Army?" the husband asked, grasping for politeness. "4 years," I said. "Threat assessment now." He nodded, relieved to escape. Dad swooped in with fresh names. "Come, you must meet the Avery partners," he said, and walked away before I finished my water. I texted Alicia under the table. "He's doing the just a guard thing." "Then be the most composed person in the room," she shot back. "Record what matters. Don't flinch." So I didn't. I clocked details instead, place cards angled to face the head table, exits masked by orchids, staff flow from the service corridor. A photographer slid onto the empty chair beside me. "Tough crowd," he murmured. "You have no idea," I said. "Between us," he added, "I'd rather the room have someone who can keep people safe than another banker with cufflinks." His half-smile almost undid me. I nodded and opened the Notes app, giving my hands something useful. Seabright, 6:18 p.m. Names, table numbers, Dad's phrasing. Evidence kept me from arguing with ghosts. He made the rounds again. "My daughter, Samantha. She's a security guard," he repeated to a woman in pearls, voice gentle with disappointment. The woman studied me the way people look at dented cans. "How practical," she said. Heat pressed behind my ribs. I took a slow drink and let the train of his sentence pass without me. By the fish course, I'd planned 3 exits: leave at dawn, stay invisible or stand my ground, and risk being the story. I watched Eleanor practice listening, eyes sliding toward anyone more useful. I thought about my mother Audrey telling me over the phone last night, "His limits aren't yours." I folded the napkin and chose. I stayed. Not to prove anything to Richard Whittaker, but because this room taught me things. Who waited, who watched, who acted. Because I'd worked sights louder than this, and danger never announced itself with a brass quartet. If humiliation was going to happen, it wouldn't be for free. When the toasts began, Dad lifted his glass. "Family is legacy," he said, looking everywhere but me. I set my phone face down, traced the seam of the table, and let the words slide off. Then the ballroom lights flickered. Just once, a tiny blink most people missed. My head snapped toward the service hall, habit, not panic. I wrote one more line, 6:47 p.m. minor flicker, East Corridor. Then I lifted my chin and faced the room that kept misnaming me, deciding that if anything went wrong this weekend, I would not be the one who stayed quiet. By 3:12 p.m., I left my room and walked the service path as if I belonged there. The salt air thinned under the resort's vanilla-clean scent, and carts rattled like tiny warnings. That's when I noticed him. Catering. But the coat hung wrong. Sleeves too long, shoes soft-soled, not kitchen clogs. He wasn't watching trays. He was mapping people. He cut through an employee door. I followed at a tourist pace, phone up like I was texting. In the corridor, he glanced left, right, left. The way-trained eyes clear corners. 2 others joined him near a storeroom. Their heads dipped toward the same pocket, and I caught the glint of matte black earpieces. I drifted past and paused at a corkboard. Their voices bled through the door metal. "After the vows," one said. "East Gate, 5-minute window," another replied. 4 more en route. The phrase settled in my spine like a weight. I stepped into an alcove and dialed 911. "My name is Samantha Hart," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm a security professional, Atlas Meridian Security, on site at Seabright Resort. I'm observing indicators of a coordinated theft, possibly armed, I gave descriptions, locations, the phrase after the vows, and requested quiet staging. Units are en route, the dispatcher said. ETA 15 to 20. I logged the time. 3:19 call placed. Next stop, security. A single guard watched a grid of cameras, coffee ring on his notepad. I need your supervisor, I said, showing my ID. Michael Russo arrived with a clipped walk and a face that had seen enough weekends go sideways. Talk to me, he said. I laid it out. Uniforms, movement patterns, East Gate, numbers. We can't blow the ceremony on a hunch, he said. It isn't a hunch, I said. It's pattern recognition. Position your team at the east entrance and the gifts. Eyes on the bar. No heroics. Contain, delay, observe. Police are 10 to 15, out Russo's jaw ticked. You carrying? No, I'm a guest. I pushed my phone across the desk. Use this list. Descriptions, likely roles. Preserve footage from cameras 12, 16, and 22. If this is real, evidence will decide everything later. He keyed his radio. Unit 2, shift to East Service. Unit 4, shadow gifts. Roving, not static. He looked at me. If we're wrong, we look paranoid, I said. If we're right, we buy time. I left the office and looped back outside. Guests were already drifting toward the garden, programs fluttering like small flags. I took a seat in the last row, angled with a clear line to the side path. A server brushed past and whispered, "Everything okay?" I smiled. It will be. My notes app stayed open. 3:32 Russo briefed. 3:41 resort units repositioned. Police en route. I scanned the edges and made a second choice I didn't love. I wouldn't warn my father. Panic telegraphs opportunity. Music swelled. The processional began. I exhaled until my ribs eased. If the room misnamed me again, the room could wait. I was on duty now, even in a dress. The quartet slid from prelude to procession, and the garden gathered itself into silence. I sat back row, aisle seat, with a clean angle on the service path and the bar. White chairs, white flowers, white lies. I scanned edges, not vows. 2 caterers posted near the gift table where envelopes fattened a crystal box. They didn't hover like staff. They mirrored guests, backs to the hedge, eyes working in discreet arcs. A third floated by the portable bar, touching the underside of the linen once like checking tape. I thumbed my notes, 3:56, 2 at gifts, 1 at bar. Bar linen check. Then I texted Russo, gifts, gray jacket too long, left-handed. Partner broader, scuffed Oxfords. Bar, tall, fake limp. East path watcher? His reply came fast. Unit 4. Shadow gifts. Unit 2, drifting east. Code word? Orchid, I typed. Say it only if you see a gun. Keep guards moving. Roving looks like help, not heat. Eleanor appeared at the top of the aisle, veiled and glowing. The row in front of me sighed. My father stood at the arch like he owned weather. I didn't look at his face long. The watcher I wanted finally surfaced, another server. Sleeves rolled too neatly, torso squared toward the east gate. He traced arrivals with his chin, subtle, counting. A scout. I lifted my program and used the glossy edge as a mirror. In the reflection, I could see camera 16's dome over the gift table and camera 22 tucked beneath a speaker near the bar. Angle's good, I typed. Preserve 16, 22, 12. Phones off, please, an usher whispered. I nodded and slipped mine to low brightness in my lap. A server brushed my shoulder with a tray. All set? She asked. Almost, I said. If anyone asks, the east entrance jammed earlier. She blinked. Is it? It will be. Vows began. The officiant's voice had that warm, practiced timbre that makes strangers feel like family. I counted still. Entrances, exits, hands. A toddler dropped a toy. The barman flinched before the sound. Not staff. Staff don't startle at plastic. Dispatch pinged Russo and he forwarded. Units 4 minutes out. Unmarked at Main. Marked staging on Old Shore Road. My chest loosened a hair. 4 can be forever, but it isn't 20. I rose casually to let a late guest slide into my row, using the movement to adjust sightlines. The scout tilted his head, tracking the aisle and the hedge gap, where a side gate latch gleamed. He touched his ear. The pair at the gifts shifted, one hand grazing jacket hem, the other scanning rings, wrists, throats. Inventory in human form. My father laughed at something the officiant said about second chances. The sound made me look up, quick and unhelpful. I forced my gaze back to the edges. Dad would stay alive if I kept him a stranger for 10 more minutes. I texted Russo one more time. Hold your folks wide. No heroics. If Orchid, aim to delay, not win. Copy. Orchid equals draw time, he wrote. The wind lifted the archflowers and I caught the East Watcher checking the sky as if light mattered. It often does. Cameras hate glare. I logged 4:07 sunshift. Reflections up. Eleanor's father placed her hand in my father's. The quartet softened. The scout exhaled and tapped twice on the tray rim, a signal I'd seen outside hotels in another life. Somewhere, someone got that message. 3 minutes, I told myself. That's what we needed before any latch clicked or linen lifted. 3 minutes and no panic. I folded the program over my thigh, steadying my breathing to the officiant's cadence, and fixed my eyes on the east gate until the world narrowed to hinge, latch, and shadow. The sound system hiccuped, lights along the hedges fluttered, and the garden inhaled. I was already turning when the man at the bar hitched his jacket, and metal flashed. Gun! I shouted, flipping a chair to make cover and dragging a teen behind it with me. Glasses chimed down the rows. The barman fired one shot into the air. The scream it bought him froze the crowd into compliance. Everybody stay down, he barked. 2 near the gifts pulled weapons, moving in a V toward the aisle. The watcher at the east gate cracked the latch with his elbow. I typed with my thumb under the chair lip, Orchid, east open. Russo's reply came in a second. Copy, units 3 out. Holding perimeter. My brain drew lines across the scene, angles of fire, blind corners, bodies I could shield. An older woman 2 rows up started gasping, eyes wide, hands clawing her necklace. A gunman swung his muzzle toward her. Shut her up, he snapped. I rose just enough to show my hands. I'm a medic, I lied. Let me help her before this turns into a homicide charge. He hesitated, then jerked the barrel. Fast! I slid to the woman, putting my body between her and the muzzle. Smell the air, I whispered. In through the nose, purse your lips, slow out. Her breath caught, then softened. I kept my head angled so I could slice the scene in my periphery. The leader, the barman, turned down the aisle, eyes scanning wrists and throats like a ledger. He stopped at my father and Eleanor. Watch, ring, necklace, he said. Dad fumbled the clasp. Eleanor's fingers shook, the leader's gaze cut to the building beyond. Safe code. Bridal suite. He pressed the muzzle to my father's temple. My stomach went cold, clean, mechanical. Dispatch pinged Russo. He forwarded, 2 units on site waiting for go. I texted, delay, don't spook, I'll pull focus. He answered with a single word, with you. I steadied the elder's breathing and lifted my chin. There's a master list of codes at the front desk, I called. I can get it. The leader's head snapped toward me. You? He said, eyes narrowing. What do you do here? Security, I said, rising to my knees, palms still open. I know the protocols. The word landed and held him. Greed is gravitational. It drags plans off their rails. Move and you die, one of the gift table men told the row behind me. People clutched pearls, watches, small inheritances. I angled my body so the leader could see I wasn't a threat, and texted, without looking, "On me in 30, kitchen corridor, cameras 12/22 live." Russo's bubble blinked. Acknowledged. My father looked at me over the barrel. Something like apology flickered, then died, replaced by fear so human it erased every ballroom rule. I breathed once, twice, matched to the elder's steadier rhythm. Then I made the calculation I'd trained for, least harm, most time. "Let me get you the codes," I told the leader, meeting his eyes so he didn't look back at my father. "You don't want bodies." "You want out." He studied me, gun inches from a history we'd never fixed. Then he nodded once. I stood slowly, blood hot in my ears, and walked toward him, already counting the steps to closing distance. Behind us, the quartet's instruments lay mute on their chairs, bows tilted like commas, in a sentence that was about to change. He closed on me, gun tilted like a question. I raised my hands and stepped into his space as if I were reaching for a keypad. "Front desk keeps a master list," I said. "Codes, contacts, safes." His eyes flicked toward the lobby. That glance was the inch I needed. I slid to his weapon side, trapped his wrist with a C-clamp grip, drove my forearm through his elbow, while my hip cut his balance. The muzzle skated past my ribs. I torqued, stripped, pinned. Training lived where fear tried to grow. "Down!" I barked, shoving him to his knees and wrenching the slide. The gun clattered to the aisle runner. For a suspended beat, the garden held its breath. Then the second man fired. Heat tore my upper arm like a hot wire, and the world snapped loud again. I pulled the leader across my body, made him my shield, and shouted toward the hedge, "Orchid, now!" From the perimeter, resort guards broke cover. 2 plainclothes stepped with them, under cover, not staff. "Police!" one yelled. Guests flattened. The gunman by the gifts hesitated, recalculating without his anchor. Russo cut the east gate with his body, shoving it shut and jamming a chair against the latch. "Drop it," an officer called. One did. The other raised his weapon toward the bar. I felt blood slick my sleeve and kept pressure with the heel of my hand. "Let's end this clean," I told the leader quietly. "You breathe air again if nobody dies today." He stared up at me, the fight draining from his shoulders. His partner wavered, then set his gun on the turf with 2 fingers. A shout tore from the service hall. "He's in the kitchen!" A third runner, sleeves too neat, bolted with a server gripped in front of him, muzzle jammed to her jaw. I shoved the leader to a uniform and went after them, left arm burning, legs already knowing the path. Swing door, prep line, steam, steel. At the loading dock, he spun with the hostage, eyes wide and glassy. "Back off," he said. The server sobbed. I kept my hands open, my voice low. "Listen, armed robbery is a number. Murder is a sentence." He tightened. "They'll shoot me anyway." "Not if you let her go," I said. "Not if you put the gun down. You're boxed in. Police at North and East. Cameras on 12 and 22 rolling. You can choose a charge right now," I edged, angle by angle until the line from his wrist to her throat bent open. "You're lying," he said. "Then look at me," I said. "Do I look like someone who needs to lie?" Something wavered. The barrel dipped a hair. I moved, deflect, strip, heel to wrist, and the weapon clanged against the dock plate. He swung a wild elbow. I took his balance and locked him face down, weight through his shoulder, until he sighed like a tire losing air. "Clear!" an officer shouted behind me. Hands cuffed him. Another pair guided the server to a milk crate and water. Only then did the pain in my arm hammer its way back in. I pressed a clean bar towel to the graze and stood for a second in the metallic quiet, heart counting out of danger. Back in the garden, guests were crying, talking, calling loved ones. Russo met me with eyes that said a week of sleep. You good? Grazed, I said. Seen? Contained, he answered. Units have them all. A woman in navy approached, badge at her belt. Captain Moreno, you just saved us a press conference we didn't want. She handed me a card. We'll need your statement and the cameras you called. 12, 16, 22. Preserve chain, I said. Incident number? 2187, she answered. Already writing. Paramedics steered me toward a chair. I let them, but kept my phone in my lap and typed with my good hand. 412 disarm. 413 shot, grazed. 414 orchid. 416 kitchen hostage resolved. 418 suspects in custody. Paper first, then pain. Only after the last timestamp did I let the medic cut my sleeve. Somewhere beyond the hedges, I heard my father say my name, small for once in his life. I didn't turn yet. I watched the officers bag the weapons, watched Russo point to the cameras, watched the red record lights blink like sober little hearts. Proof would hold, when adrenaline didn't. I woke to my phone rattling across the nightstand. Bandage tugged when I reached. Messages stacked. Alicia. Are you okay? News says, hero. Mom. Call me. So proud, sweetheart, my boss. Martin. 2 missed calls and a voicemail that began, we're proud and also, please confirm you're not dying. I laughed once, then winced. Downstairs, the resort felt hungover. I followed a staffer to a smaller ballroom. For statements, she said. Captain Moreno was already there, crisp as the badge on her belt. We'll need a supplemental, she said. Same incident number. She rechecked my timeline, asked 2 clean clarifiers, then closed her notebook. You kept people alive. Go get food. The brunch clung to politeness like a life raft. Murmurs, linen, the clink of polite forks. Eleanor crossed to me with a sincerity that didn't wobble. How's your arm? She asked. It'll heal, I said. Detectives done? They said thank you, she managed, eyes shining. We all should. I felt the room noticing me in a new register, like someone had turned a dial from service to signal. My father held court near the windows, telling a story with his hands. I caught the tale. Always knew she had it in her, he said. Heat rose in my face, the old kind, not from blood loss. A sudden hush rolled through the room. Someone had turned up the TV over the bar. A Chiron crawled. Attempted robbery. Foiled by security expert. 7 in custody. My headshot from Atlas Meridian filled the screen, then grainy venue footage. Me closing on the leader, the disarm, the lunge in the kitchen. A guest whispered, too loud to be private. Holy, she's on the news. Crystal chimed. I looked at my father just as his flute slipped, stem snapping in his fingers, champagne starred the floor around his shoes. The quick actions of Samantha Hart prevented tragedy, the anchor said. Moreno appeared on screen. Her assessment and restraint saved lives. The camera cut back to me carrying a towel against my arm. Watching myself like that felt distant, like seeing a stranger who knew all my moves. Applause started uncertain, then gathered. I lifted a hand, not to bask, to end it. A resort manager hustled over. Media would love— No interviews, I said. Not today. Not here. My father reached me at last. Words rusted. Samantha, he said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. You were extraordinary. I did my job, I answered. The one you keep calling just. He flinched. Eleanor touched his sleeve, a quiet nudge toward listening. From the doorway, a staffer beckoned. Detectives wanted one final signature on my statement. I excused myself. As I walked, people made space the way rooms do for a first responder. I wasn't their centerpiece, I was their exit plan that worked. In the hall, I replaced the towel with fresh gauze and texted Alicia, alive. Gray's dad saw it all. She replied with 3 siren emojis and record receipts. Feel later. I smiled. Paper first, then pain. Back inside, the news looped. I sat where the cameras couldn't find me and pressed my palm into the throb until it steadied into something like purpose. Detectives found me again near the side doors, the carpet smelling faintly of bleach and ocean. Captain Moreno flipped open her notebook. 2 clarifications, she said. Sequence between your orchid call and perimeter collapse? I walked her through it, timestamps and camera numbers. She nodded, satisfied. There's talk of a civilian citation, she added. We'll be in touch. She handed me a form. Release for CCTV. You flagged the right angles. Outside the ballroom, a hotel PR rep hovered with a glossy smile. Miss? Hart. The press would love. No interviews, I said. If you need a statement, quote the department. She blinked, not used to no in a dress. When I stepped back in, Dad had an audience again. I always knew the Army would be good for her, he said, his laugh practiced. I could feel the revisions settling like sugar dust. I stopped beside him. I didn't do this because of your plan, I said quietly. I did it because it was right. The circle hushed. He colored. He tried softer. You were brave, Samantha. Competent, I said. Brave is what the guests were, holding still when it mattered. Eleanor touched my sleeve. People are asking for you upstairs. Media, donors. I won't be part of a victory lap, I said. This was an incident, not a brand. My phone buzzed. Martin. Company statement drafted. Do you want to be named? I typed back. Keep it clinical. Credit police and resort security. No hero language. He replied, proud of you anyway. I crossed to Russo by the bar where a busser scraped glass into a bin. You preserved 12, 16, 22? I asked. Already mirrored to a drive, he said. Chain signed. Good, I said, and meant it like a prayer. Dad trailed me to a quiet alcove. I didn't know, he said. About Atlas Meridian. About the summit work. About any of it. You didn't ask, I said. He flinched, then nodded once. I'd like to start asking, he said. Then start by listening, I answered. No more just a guard jokes. No more introductions that shrink me so you can grow, he swallowed. Understood. We stood there, with the surf faint under the HVAC, 2 people learning a language late. He reached for my good hand, stopped. May I? Not yet, I said, and he let the air hold the apology. The PR rep reappeared, softer this time. If you change your mind. If I talk, it'll be at a training or a shelter fundraiser, I said, not for spectacle. On my way out, I texted Alicia. No media. Paper to Captain Moreno. Dad heard me. She replied, good. Purpose over polish. I tucked the release in my bag, feeling the weight of it. A boundary in legalese. Outside, gulls traced the sky like commas, and I walked the long way to my room so my pulse could catch up to what I'd chosen. No spin, no stage. Just work I could sign my name to. Dad texted at 2:11 p.m. Can we talk? Just us. I chose the rooftop bar because the wind could carry away anything I didn't want to keep. When I arrived, he was already there at a corner table, 2 glasses waiting. Club soda with lime, he said, nudging one toward me. You don't drink on duty. It was a small thing, but it landed. We watched the ocean for a beat. He cleared his throat. I watched the coverage again, what the captain said, what your boss said. I didn't know you did any of that. You didn't ask, I said. No heat? Just the record? He nodded, jaw tight. I deserve that. Introduced you like a footnote because I thought status protected us. Yesterday, a stranger with a gun proved me wrong." He looked at his hands. "I'm sorry, Samantha. Not for the bad headline. For the years, I don't need your apology to validate my work," I said. "I needed recognition long before the TV loop. I needed you not to shrink me so you could expand in a room." His eyes lifted, less defensive this time. "How do I fix that?" "You don't fix it," I said. "You practice. You stop saying just. You ask what I do and mean it. You don't try to own the parts of me that finally make sense to you. And if you ever introduce me again, you use my name and let it stand." He exhaled. "I can do that." We fell into a quieter place. He told me he'd spoken to Mom, that she'd reminded him she'd been attending my ceremonies alone for years. "She said you always knew your mind," he added. "I kept trying to swap it for mine." "Her support never required cameras," I said. He winced, then nodded again. He glanced at my bandage. "Does it hurt?" "It did less when I was counting angles," I said, and surprised myself by smiling. He smiled back, small and real. The bartender drifted over. Dad waved him off. "No more toasts today," he said. "I'd like to listen." So I told him what a threat pattern looks like, how earpieces sit when people aren't used to them, why a bad jacket can be louder than a raised voice. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said simply, "Thank you." I checked the time and wrote one line in my notes. 2:44, met with our set boundary. Agreed to practice. He noticed the habit and didn't mock it. "Will you let me come to something real?" he asked. "A training, not a gala." "Yes," I said, "because that's where respect lives, in the boring parts." We stood. He reached for a hug, stopped. "May I?" "Start with a handshake," I said, and we did. His grip was careful, not claiming. On the way out, I texted Mom. We spoke. He heard me. She replied, "Good. Keep your center." I slid the phone away, the ocean steady below us, and felt something steadier inside. Not reconciliation, not yet, but a clean ledger to build on. In the weeks after the resort, my life rearranged itself without asking. Martin called me into a glass-walled conference room at AMS and slid a folder across the table. "Head of Threat and Training," he said. "You'll build the program you keep saving us with." I laughed because it was easier than crying. The offer letter felt heavy. Salary bump, travel budget, a line about developing curriculum for event security. I initialed every page, dated the last, and snapped a photo for my records. Paper first, then pride. The scar on my upper arm itched as it healed, a raised hyphen I touched when meetings ran long. Therapy helped me stop pretending I hadn't been carrying my father's voice around like extra armor. "Recognition isn't oxygen," my therapist said. "You survived without it." I scheduled her into my calendar like a standing patrol. Captain Moreno emailed, "Civilian citation. City Hall, 10 a.m." I stood on a small stage beside people who had done braver things with fewer tools. Afterward, Dad hovered near the steps, hands in his pockets. "May I take you to lunch?" he asked. "To talk about what you actually do?" We sat at a diner that smelled like griddle and coffee. He listened while I explained why we train for delay over domination, how a well-placed chair can be safer than a hero move. He didn't turn my sentences into speeches. 2 weeks later, he showed up at an AMS training day, sitting in the back of a warehouse where we'd taped hallways in blue painter's tape. I ran scenarios: bad uniforms, fake staff, power flickers. He watched me brief rookies on camera angles and crowd physics, never looking at his phone. When the class ended, he waited for everyone to leave, then said, "You look most like yourself here." It was the closest thing to respect I'd ever heard in his voice. A trade magazine profile came out, rising leaders in private security, with a photo I actually liked. He framed it and placed it in his office, next to a silver sailboat award with his name on it. "Equal shelf space," he texted with a picture. I saved it without answering, because I had learned that the truest apologies repeat themselves quietly. At home, I kept my apartment the way field kits should be: clean lines, reachable tools. On Thursdays, I taught de-escalation at the shelter. On Sundays, I ran the seawall at dawn, lungs burning in the good way. Mom came to a Saturday class and high-fived a trainee after a perfect shield maneuver. "Told you," she whispered in my ear. "You always knew your mind." When doubt crept back, I read my own notes, timestamps, choices. The sentence I wrote the morning after the incident: "Governance is care." I added a new one beneath it: "Consistency is love." Dad started practicing it, short texts after trainings. "Proud of your work. Tell me one thing you changed today." A club soda at dinner, no boasts. He asked if he could come to one more session. I said yes, not because I needed the witness, but because practice needs partners. By the end of the quarter, the program was live. The scar had faded to a pale line. The applause had gone back to wherever applause goes. What stayed was a classroom full of rookies, learning to move a crowd without hurting it, and the click of a pen in my own hand as I signed another printout: "Atlas Meridian, Course 01 certified." The paper didn't make it true. The work did. A year later, I stood behind a curtain at the Seabright Ballroom, watching first responders pin name tags to borrowed suits. The gala wasn't ours by blood. Eleanor had suggested it, but Dad insisted the honorees choose the menu and the music. No neon ice sculptures, no champagne towers. On the lectern, a small card read, "Program, Tribute, Training." Grant announcements, keynote, S. Hart. Club soda waited at stage left. Dad found me in the wings. "Your mic's hottin' too," he said, offering the glass. "No surprises, the MC will read your bio exactly as you wrote it." He smiled like a student trying to show work. "Atlas Meridian, threat and training. No, just." "Thank you," I said. He hovered, then stepped back. "I'll sit with the firefighters," he added. "Today isn't about me." It landed better than any toast. The curtain opened. Applause rolled easy, not feverish. I walked to the podium, the room a quilt of uniforms and families. "Security," I began, "isn't a swagger. It's care made operational. It's noticing the odd jacket before the headline, placing a chair where a bullet might have flown, keeping records so the right story survives the wrong adrenaline." A murmur of recognition moved through the tables. I told them about delay over domination, about training ushers to see lines of travel, about how a power flicker belongs in a log, even when the party shrugs it off. "We fund tactics that keep people whole," I said, "and we publish our ledgers, so trust isn't a speech. It's a file you can open." The screen behind me showed grants, equipment for volunteer EMTs, scholarships for de-escalation instructors, a child care stipend so a rookie could finish night classes. It wasn't flashy. It was the point. Questions came. A paramedic asked how to teach calm to panic. "You don't teach calm," I said. "You teach tasks." Calm sneaks in while hands have something useful to do. Laughter, soft, true. When it was over, the applause felt like weather, not worship. Dad didn't rush the stage. He waited by the side aisle, hands in his pockets, eyes bright. "You were clear," he said. "I understood everything." He hesitated. "May I brag to exactly one person?" I nodded toward Mom, who was already weaving through the crowd with a grin. He kissed her cheek first, then shook my hand like we'd promised. Later, alone on the terrace, I looked out at the dark water and touched the pale line on my arm. My phone buzzed. Martin. "Training cohort full." Waitlist started. Russo. "Camera upgrade funded." Alicia. Proud of you. Don't let them add confetti. I smiled and typed received because I'd learned the difference between recognition and spectacle. Inside, the band played something easy. Dad stepped onto the floor with Eleanor, not to perform, just to move. I slipped the speech into a folder with the grant confirmations and walked back to the room that finally fit. Not polished for a camera, but organized for care. Purpose over polish. Paper over myth. That was the work. That was my name.